I have always been here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, geeks and nerds and ambassadors everywhere, and welcome back to the Ambassadorial Wing. And hope y'all are having a wonderful Saturday night. Hope it's been a good weekend for you thus far, and we are back with you live once again with another Ambassadors Retro Review. And tonight, me and my good friend, you know him, you love him, Mr. Zach Leary, are going to be bringing you our thoughts on a true icon, a real classic of the 1980s, Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. And as always, if this is your first visit to the Ambassadorial Wing, make sure you smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share this out with all your friends who are fans of great classic retro cinema. And Zach, good to have you back, man. And no pun intended. So,
thanks for having me.
You're welcome, man. This we're not going to stand on a whole lot of ceremony here because we don't do that here. We don't do big, long, truncated intros. We get right into the fun. I do want to send a shout out to the chat to Cassier Gracias and TW McKay. Gentlemen, good evening. Thank you for being here. I want to change my answer. I meant no. And yes, to everybody that's in the chat, I have posted a poll in regards to tonight's topic. Is Deckard a replicant? So, and me and Zach will bring you our thoughts on this. Obviously, Zach has given his answer, but we'll spend some time tonight talking about this. I mean, this honestly for me is this is a true iconic film of the 1980s and is one of Ridley Scott's best. So, anyway, Zach, my friend, I have done my thing. Let's jump in. Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's a noir film, right? It's got all these interesting archetypal underpinnings. You've got the Frankenstein complex going on.
Yep.
Which is a fun element. You've got with Tyrell, obviously, and one of the best bad guys ever, man. I mean, Roy Batty, Rutger Hauer, one of the best of all time. You have a strangely kind of low key Harrison Ford performance. It's a detective story. It's got these awesome visuals. It really kind of groundbreaking visually, where it's just a gorgeous movie. I mean,
yes,
unbelievable.
It is. Well, and for the time, I mean, this movie was made in like the early to mid 80s, and the special effects shots, the special effects are just cutting edge for the time and really honestly well done. They hold up great. I actually was able to get a copy of this film on Blu-ray, cheap at my local Walmart, and I've watched it a few times. I rewatched it this afternoon and everything in preparation for our discussion. And it's still, I mean, we have a 4K TV and we have a 4K player to boot. The special effects hold up so well. They're so seamless. It's honestly breathtaking. But Zach, you bring up some good points and everything. This obviously is I call this a sci-fi noir. It's a little bit of both. Obviously, It takes place in the future. Their future, our past, essentially, because we're now in 2022. So, and I do want to send a shout to the chat, my good friend, my fellow council member, Mountains of Elysium. Good to see you, my friend, and appreciate you stopping by. And he says, a truly great quote from the film. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. No, really. I was just on Twitter. What a hellscape did I just see?
Oh, I've seen it too.
Elysium, it is good to see you, bud. Appreciate you stopping in tonight. And TW, thank you, TW, for that. Yeah, released in 1982. Let's see, 82. I was.
You could also say there's an
Hmm.
element of ultra realism within the movie, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it really it does and everything because you understand that this is a fictitious setting, but there's a heightened reality or a heightened realism to it, as you said. And honestly, it has long been a favorite film of mine, not just because it's a great performance by Harrison Ford, but it has a great cast around him. I mean, you've got Rucker Hauer, may he rest in peace, obviously. You've got Sean Young as Rachel. You've got Emmett Walsh as Bryant. You've got, I think, one of the
Who is
best.
still around, by the way.
Yes, he is. He's still hanging around. So, um,
He just showed up in one of my favorite new shows, Righteous Gemstones.
I have actually heard of that show. It's on HBO Max, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't had a chance to check it out. Oh, Elysium. Yes, I've got to bring up his comment here. Don't forget the iconic soundtrack by Vangelis. It was awesome. Yes, it absolutely is. Of course, it's not the first time that they've worked with Scott on a soundtrack. So, and also to the chat, just George. George, good to see you, bud, and appreciate you stopping in this evening. I think for me, the really intriguing thing about this story or this movie is the fact that it is a detective noir. I've always been very attracted to those types of stories. And this one takes several different elements from different types of genres of noir or stories and makes them beautiful, makes for one hell of a story. I mean, a lot of people regard this, like I said, as one of Scott's best films. So anyway, Zach, I've kind of run off the mouth here, so I'm gonna let you have the floor for a few minutes. So go for it, my man.
All right, so I've got a couple more people I want to shout out as some of my favorite parts of the film in terms of casting. The casting is superb, and I think kind of the casting is the most important part in, aside from Ridley Scott's vision of the movie in terms of making it feel like a real movie, is we don't have really these. We have recognizable faces, but a lot of these people are character actors, which is so beautiful to me. You've got James Hong, who plays Hannibal in the film, and James is such a charismatic and fun actor. He's a fun guy to see on screen.
Yes.
Perhaps best known for playing Kung Fu Panda's dad in the Kung Fu Panda movies.
He also is in he's in another favorite cult classic from the 1980s, John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China. He plays David Lopan.
Yeah, that's right. Let's see, who else do we have? Edward James Olmos is tremendous.
I was the best. Yes, as Gaff or Goff. Yeah, he was great in this. Very interesting wardrobe for Goff. Honestly, I loved his. Honestly, for me, one of the great things about this film is the wardrobing. They did a really standout job making everybody look different in terms of their costuming, their wardrobing. I mean, it almost looks like they yanked it out of like an old pulp noir novel or something like that. I mean, you look at Rachel as Sean Young's character, at her costuming, and it is just like she belongs in a 1930s or 1940s detective story, not in a 1982 sci-fi noir film, but it's absolutely stunning. I mean, of course, you've got Harrison Ford and everything. He is kind of a play on the classic gumshoe detective aesthetic for his costuming. You've got Rucker Hauer costuming, it's more industrialized, and he's kind of they play him off as the bad guy, but for me, I don't really see any of these characters as necessarily the bad guy. They're more, particularly with the replicants, they're victims. At least that's my take.
Well, but in the same way, you could almost describe anything as a victim, right? Anything born without consent, right? Which is kind of interesting. The whole concept of replicant is a quandary. It's very interesting. Should replicants have human rights? And it goes down that road, or it could. Well, you could also call the film dystopian. There's this kind of oppressive, weird thing happening, which is what I would say contributes to the suspense, right? It's like, God, I don't want to make a certain reference, but the concept of people hiding from the government is a creepy concept.
Well, in terms of the replicants hiding from the authorities, I get what I do understand. I get what you're saying exactly. And the interesting thing for me is Scott never comes out and says if this is a dystopian film, but I do get that. I did get that impression on the numerous times I've watched it, that there's something not quite right with this world, and we're not sure what it is per se. It's almost like you look at the environmental setting, and it's almost like there's some sort of environmental calamity that has occurred or is occurring or something along those lines, because it always is very dark. It's always very rainy. The opening shot of the film it's very industrialized. You see the future of Los Angeles 2019, and it's all built over and built on top of each other and built on top of each other. It's almost like there's been a population boom, but at the same time, there's whole buildings where there's only maybe one or two people living in one, in particular with J.F. Sebastian, his building.
Yeah. Well, and Scott paints the picture of a society. He kind of, just with the poverty that we see, and just which is the mark of a great director, is creating a world that is not necessarily spelled out for us, but leaves behind enough clues for us to kind of sink into the film,
Yeah, absolutely. Because one word I would definitely use to describe this film, and I think you'd probably agree with me, Zach, is it's very atmospheric. There is as you said, there's an oppressiveness to the setting, and it's very grimy. It's very dingy. There's a lot of graffiti everywhere. There's a lot of trash. It's not well kept. And yet, with Tyrell's complex or anything, his industry, it's all very clean, very pristine, very well kept. And I think what Scott was doing is, with the diversification of the setting for this film, he's showing the opulence of a person who has industry, who has built up this corporation, Tyrell Corporation, and has all the money and all the stuff you'd ever want for. And meanwhile, you've even got a police department that's seemingly, if you look at Brian's office, it's very cluttered, it's very messy, it's very cramped. The entire department seems very cramped. And excuse me. That to me it says a lot about Scott's ability to set his shots and make you feel like you're in that space with these characters.
Yeah, well,
And go ahead.
the sterile nature of Tyrell's office is
Mm-hmm.
totally detached, like you're saying, totally detached from reality. And I would say in many ways so is the character.
Yeah, definitely, because his only real contact with anybody is his chess games with J.F. Sebastian. And aside from that, Deckard, I mean, even the dialogue makes it sound like it's very difficult to get in to see this guy. I mean, he is a guy of great importance. He's built this corporation that has this very interesting commodity, uh, the replicant, which they send off to do, well, essentially, as you kind of mentioned, they're practically a slave labor force, and they're I don't like to use this term, but I think it's appropriate here. They're a slave army, because if you look at the characters of Leon and Roy Batty, they're both soldiers, but they're unwitting soldiers. They were created to fight and kill and eventually burn out and die. So,
What was giving them um, freedom of thought? Was that a purposeful decision, or was that a glitch?
um, that's now that honestly it's a really interesting question, because here's where the really deep dive into this story goes. When Deckard makes the connection that Tyrell has given the replicants memories, or in particular with the replicant Rachel, he's given her memories, but they all seem to have similar memories. And I'm going somewhere with this, so just bear with me for a minute. As human beings, we establish our identity with the experiences that we have. And where do those experiences come from? From our memories. And the interesting thing is, I think it is maybe a unexpected byproduct of giving the replicants memories that they eventually develop emotions. But the problem is, they're machines, and they don't necessarily know how to process those emotions. Because if you look at the scene where Roy kills Tyrell, he's almost in pain when he does it. I mean, he does it, but he seems to be conflicted as he does it.
Yeah, well, it's very strange. I mean, imagine killing God.
Essentially, yeah. You're actually not far off there, because you mentioned it earlier on and everything. This does have a Frankenstein element to the story with the replicants and them trying to locate their creator. And if you remember the original version of the Frankenstein story, not the cinematic versions that we have seen throughout the years, the creature eventually tracks down Victor, and he's Victor has been in seclusion. He's been hiding because he's afraid the creature will find him. His creation will find him. And yeah, unlike the Frankenstein story, the creature doesn't kill Victor. He simply leads him to his own demise, essentially.
Leaves
But
him to
with Roy,
perish.
yeah, essentially he leaves him to perish eventually. But with Roy, he acts on that anger, on that resentment, but at the same time, if it wasn't for Tyrell, he would not exist at all. So, and I'll bring up TW's comment here real quick. He's in pain not because he doesn't want to kill him; it's anger. At least that's how I see it. That's an interesting take to TW. So, and I can't say necessarily disagree with it because there's a lot of different interpretations for that particular scene where Roy does kill Tyrell. And I will bring up Elysium's comment also. Pris is a sex slave regardless of her choice. Roy is forced to kill regardless of his beliefs. It's horrific. Tyrell looks far less an innocent victim. That's true. Because if you look at the replicants that we see in this movie, Leon is essentially just in the labor force. He's got enhanced strength. That's what he does. Roy's a soldier. That's what he does. Pris is what they call a pleasure model. That's what she does. And Zora is she's also a combat model, but she has other adaptations which we see in the film, in the film, and you feel bad for the replicants because, as you said, Zach, they were created without consent, so they are indeed victims, and it's a sad thing to see because Deckard's brought in to take these replicants out, and even he doesn't want to do it anymore. He's like, I'm retired, but his arm gets twisted.
Well, what I would say differentiates the experience is the lack of parents and a childhood, right?
Yes.
That's kind of what it comes down to. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll bring up I'll bring up TW's comment here real quick. In my honest opinion, he's angry because he gets all the way there only to find out his dreams of a longer life is impossible. Yeah, that is true, TW. And Stephen Murphy, Stephen, thank you for popping in this evening. I appreciate you being here as always. So, though the movie was an adaptation, it was a tough writing process between Scott and Hampton Fincher. So, David Peoples was brought in. Peoples was a writer on Lady Hawk, Leviathan, and Bloody Heroes. Two of those films I'm very familiar with. The Bloody Heroes one, I'm not so much, Stephen, but thank you for. And apparently he also was on worked on Unforgiven, Hero, 12 Monkeys, and Soldier. Again, I know those movies. I've never actually watched 12 Monkeys all the way through. So, but Zach, your thoughts?
Thoughts on?
Well, okay. Let me put this to you. In terms of Deckard's role in the story, do you think he has any regrets? No, okay, not regret. That's the wrong word. Do you think he has any hesitation with what he does? Because he almost seems like he's reluctant to take on this case because he does say to Bryant, I'm out, I'm retired. I'm not a Blade Runner anymore. But it almost seems like once he meets Rachel, he's brought back in, or he comes back in more willingly, and he's more engaged in the case. So, your thoughts on Deckard's part?
Yeah, well, I mean, the character I think is introspective. He played by Ford in a way that kind of has a lot going under the surface, a lot going on underneath the surface.
Mm-hmm.
I would say there's regret. I would say there's questioning his own, morality in a certain way.
Yeah. If you recall, when he goes to meet Tyrell, and he, like I say, he gets introduced to Rachel. There's that moment there where he's almost, it's very subtle, but he's almost taken aback by the fact that a replicant has been, although granted, Daryl Hannah and the other actress who played Zora, they're both very stunning women and everything, and the characters they played were, I think, executed very well. but there was something different about Rachel that really struck with Deckard. And Deckard was intrigued and everything by the fact that it took him so long to figure out that she was a replicant. And it almost lends to the argument that Deckard himself is also a replicant, because his reactions throughout the film aren't quite human, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, there's something off about him a little bit, but regarding your poll, I'm curious to see what your viewers think about him being a replicant or not, and maybe we can get into that a little bit. Ridley
Yeah.
Scott argues that he is, and has apparently maintained this opinion. Or, well, I guess if he's the filmmaker, it's in a way, depending on how you
Mhm.
would take a filmmaker's word on something, could be a fact, right? Depending on how you take that. So Scott says replicant. Ford says he was playing a human being. So
Yeah.
that's kind of an interesting thing. However, I don't take that Scott's word as being a fact.
Mhm.
I think there's circumstantial evidence that kind of lends to
Okay.
him kind of, and again, I'm not saying conclusively.
Yeah.
My little name here is kind of a joke, but
Yeah. Mhm.
I find some of the stuff compelling and some of the possibilities
Okay.
compelling.
Okay. If you got the time, and everything, I know, because I know you're going to have to leave in a little bit, but um, if you want to give your perspective on one way or the other, just to give you an update on the poll so far, it's 43-57 to Deckard is not a replicant. I think so. That's
Say
where
it one
we're
more
at.
time.
It's 57% to 43%. Deckard is not a replicant.
This is a close poll.
Yeah, it is. So,
Yeah.
what's your evidence on well, first, what do you think? Do you think Deckard is a replicant or he isn't? And if so, why?
Okay, well, there's a couple of things, and you mentioned his. You almost described him as having inhuman behavior throughout the film, right? So,
Somewhat, yes. Yeah.
okay, so you have that. You have the origami unicorn, which is very interesting. At the end
Mm-hmm.
of the film, you have the scene at the end of the film, which is very similar to the character's dream, right?
Yes.
Which I think it may have been fucked around with that scene. I can't remember, in various versions of the movie on different, DVD and whatever
Mm-hmm.
releases. But I mean, the question is, how does Gaff know that anything that's going on inside Deckard's head, right? Very, very strange, kind of creepy.
Yeah. Um, and well, we have to ask the question: was Gaff himself a Blade Runner? And if so, had he done similar the Void Comp or cough test? And that was one of the questions: have you ever dreamed about unicorns or something to that effect? And the fact that he does leave behind that little origami unicorn at the end of the movie when Deckard and Rachel make a run for it is rather interesting. There's also, I know this might be for some people a somewhat uncomfortable scene, but I think there's a lot going on within it. And that's the scene where Rachel lets her hair down after she plays the piano and Deckard has fallen asleep and she's getting ready to leave. And I will put this as politely and delicately as I can. Deckard forces himself on her, but at the same time, she seems to be okay with it. that doesn't seem like a normal interaction between two individuals. And I use the word individuals because if Deckard is in fact a replicant, and we know that Rachel is definitely a replicant, then that would make sense. But if this is a human coming on to essentially a machine, it's not quite when I say natural, it's not unnatural. It's just not how we are socialized to flirt or engage in sexual congress. So that for me, always that scene there for myself makes me think that perhaps Deckard maybe is a replicant.
Well, there's a sense in the film that that line has been blurred. Okay, I think you have the term like pleasure replicant or something, right?
Pleasure model, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that line has kind of been blurred.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Because you've got the replicant Pris played by Daryl Hannah, and she is what they call a pleasure model. When you see her for the first time, she's dressed somewhat like I'll just
like
say
a
it
hooker,
like a prostitute. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and well, that makes sense. But with Rachel, she's dressed like a very high class lady, like a high class woman, a woman of means, of position, of stature, not like Pris. But the way that Deckard interacts with her, you almost get the impression that maybe at one point he had interacted on a sexual level with a pleasure model replicant. We don't know for sure.
Yeah, the character has a lonely quality to him too. It's kind of
He does.
Which is, I think another thing that kind of gives the Deckard character is you get the sense of his wanting to connect with somebody,
Yeah, because, and this is something we really haven't discussed, but everybody seems very isolated in this film.
Mm-hmm.
Deckard, the scientists, Tyrell himself. Although I think with Tyrell, it's a self-imposed isolation. He wants it to be that way, but with everybody else, they seem very lonely, and they don't want to be alone, and that's why the interactions with J.F. Sebastian when he first meets Pris is he himself is very lonely, not to mention he has a incurable disease. So his time with anybody for him is of value. So that's why he's very open to allowing Pris into his life. And even though he does know that she is a replicant, he doesn't care. It's human interaction. And I think with everybody in this film, the world has become a place where people are very isolated. It's never implicitly stated, but it does seem to be the fact of the matter.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's you're seeing the line between it's almost like I don't want to use the word moral, but there's a certain boundary that's kind of a creepy boundary that I even feel today between human beings and technology,
I get where you're going. It's the interaction between the organic and the inorganic, to kind of use those terms, because we have in this film, we have reached a technological level where we have essentially created androids, is what we've made at this point. These aren't
Yeah.
robots. They're not automatons or anything. They're not like Robbie the Robot from Forbidden Planet or Lost in Space. these are beings that we have made to replicate us on numerous different levels, minus the ability to procreate. And they can emulate human emotion. They can emulate human emotional responses, even though they don't quite understand them. But there's still an inhuman element about them. And that's the interesting thing about it. Because
Didn't one get pregnant in the sequel?
in the sequel, yeah, and we will I know you mentioned this and everything in our us talking back and forth. I will do a follow-up stream on Blade Runner 2049 because that is a movie I would love to discuss in depth. I just didn't have time this week to sit down and give it a watch. So, but yeah, the interesting thing with this film is it does make you ask the question, what does it mean to be human, and what does it mean to be alive?
Well, I am of the mindset, not in a serious way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I think about this, but I mean, if the
Yeah.
question was posed to me, I mean, I do believe that human beings are, in a certain way, right? Not in a direct way. We're not, at least at this point, connected physically to technology, but I think everybody's cell phone is um, a representation of, if you look at people's uh, browsing history, a representation of themselves, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and what they're interested in, what they're thinking. So in many ways, we're already connected with technology. We're already androids in a certain way. Take away people's phones and see what questions they can answer.
That's true. That's true. Because we have become somewhat reliant on. We have become not somewhat, but we have become reliant on technology. Now, speaking just for myself, no one else. If you were to take away my cell phone tomorrow, I could adapt relatively easy to not having it around me anymore, because I had lived in a world for 25 some odd years without a cell phone. These weren't The cell phones have really made a quantum leap in terms of their functionality, their computing power, and everything else that they can do across the board just within the last maybe 5 to 10 years, if anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So, for someone like myself, I could function just fine without a cell phone. I mean, I could go out tomorrow and just get a base model mobile phone just to keep in contact with people, and that would be more than enough for me. The only difference would be I'd have to have a hard copy um, phone book rather than a digital one. So and just
And
put
maps.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, the only thing that cell phones really has done is it has car- compartmentalized a lot of the different things that were once in a hard file or a hard copy form into a digital one.
Well, that phone knows a whole lot of shit about us.
That's true.
So
I mhm.
another interesting thing is that the algorithms created by Google and by other well-known sites as Facebook, Twitter, these
Mhm.
algorithms are um, what's the word when there's a organism has many living creatures within it, like the Halo flood. What would you call that? Where you've got
Um,
all these hive
It's
mind, hive mind.
yeah,
You've got a
yeah,
hive
that's it.
mind
Hmm. Yeah,
thing with these algorithms where it's kind of alive in a certain way. It's just being programmed by human beings.
essentially. But we are getting exceedingly close, if we have not already gotten there, to the concept of AI. And I just wanted to, I wanted to bring up Elysium's comment here. Um, I agree with you wholeheartedly, my friend, truly. So, but the interesting thing is once we hit the ability to create artificial intelligence, the world is going to change in a very drastic way. And it's going to become a very uncomfortable place, I think, for a lot of people because so many of us, particularly those of us who are cinephiles, fans of cinema, we know movies like Terminator and The Matrix, the first Matrix, not that god awful sequel that came out last year. Um,
If you watch
it's
it as a comedy, it works.
I know, yeah. But when we hear the term artificial intelligence, that's where our mind goes to is like, oh crap, all the nukes are gonna launch and we're all gonna die.
Yeah, well, we want to be the top dog.
Yes,
Having somebody above us is not a comfortable feeling because we know how fucked up we are.
that's true. So,
In
but
terms of the human race, all the wars we've created, everything we've done, uh,
mhm,
not to suggest that human beings are a destructive force. I have great faith in people, right? I think the human
as do
race
I.
as a whole is a really positive thing, but we know
Yes,
what we're capable of, right? So
yes,
the concept of AI to us, something far more superior intellectually than us, um, is quite disturbing, and also with the capability to hack governments, to launch missiles. God knows
hmm
what a loose super super intelligence could do. We just
yeah.
don't know.
Well, and this might be another movie I will do a review on down the road, Neri. War Games with Matthew Broderick. Um, that movie, while somewhat campy, it does present the opportunity for a really good discussion on a very primitive but a very powerful artificial intelligence in the form of the Whopper computer. And it's interesting with that film. And again, like I said, well, I might do a deeper discussion on it down the road in a few months. You've got a young kid who is very savvy with early computer technology. I mean, you take a look at Matthew Broderick's character's computer setup, and you're like, "Oh, good grief, this thing's a dinosaur!" But at the time, that was cutting edge, and he hacks into this um, supercomputer essentially, and is like, "Let's play a game where we destroy the world." And that's a frightening concept. But now you bring it down to a smaller artificial intelligence in terms of the replicants. And we we as human beings in a lot of ways we've created an artificial intelligence that looks like us, reasons like us, but isn't us. It's other from us, and the other always frightens us as people.
Yeah, I don't support the concept of AI. Period. I mean, to be honest with you, it is creepy. Um,
Yeah.
and plus, the concept of AI could very easily drive some creepy people into elected offices around the world in terms of campaigning against it, because I don't think people like it. So there's so many weird things and creepy things that could and probably will happen uh, if this were to continue to develop like it is.
Yeah, because there are so many science fiction stories that are that are cautionary tales about us creating non-human intelligence, artificial intelligence. And I think that right there is the the driving force behind a movie like Blade Runner, because we've created these extremely capable, extremely powerful, physically and mentally beings that could quite literally wipe us all out if they were in a position where they could do so. But in terms of Blade Runner, to kind of get back to the discussion on that, all these replicants want to do is to live longer, to have more life. But when you have the conversation between Roy and Tyrell's telling him every time we've tried to do it, it creates some sort of virulent, it's an extremely destructive virus. And that's an interesting thing, because if someone were to reverse engineer or try to give a replicant a longer lifespan, they could wittingly or unwittingly release a virus that could wipe out all human life. And that just shows just how truly destructive the replicants can be, even though they don't intend to be that way. That's the really interesting thing.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
So, I do want to bring up Steven's comment here, and I do want to send a shout to the chat. Jeff B, it is good to see you. And Jeff makes a comment: War Games was a precursor to Terminator. Yep, you're not wrong, Jeff. So, Steven, people often use AI as a villain and believe all they want to do is destroy and simplify it, but sometimes there's more beneath the surface of motivation. That's true. Because if you look at the replicants as a form of artificial intelligence, they simply want more life. They're not malevolent or evil. They're not destructive or vicious. They simply want to have what we as human beings take for granted, and that's a longer lifespan.
Well, let me ask you this: is there anything about the film that you don't like?
To be perfectly candid, as many times as I've watched it, there's the only thing that is somewhat unsettling for me in terms of the story itself. Maybe that, like I mentioned, that one scene between Deckard and Rachel, that always put me at ill at ease, because it does teeter on the edge of Deckard assaulting Rachel. But aside from that, no, not really. I mean, I think the narrative itself is very solid. It's well crafted, it's well written, it's well acted. No, not particularly. What about you, Zach?
No, I don't have too much bad to say about it either. The only thing that is kind of cumbersome is certain elements of pacing. I think. But aside from that, no, it's I have a very positive view of the film. Just the certain pacing sections within the film, I think, could have been maybe sped up a little bit or cut a little bit differently. I mean, the most famous example of this is that scene with Harrison with the camera footage, right? And camera zoom in.
That
that's
scene, yes.
that's like a 6 or 7 minute scene or some crazy number like that.
Yeah, that scene did seem a little bit long, but at the same time, I didn't honestly notice that it was too long to anything. For me, it showed that that showed the detective mind of Deckard himself.
Yeah, it does.
That's kind of how that's how I perceived that particular scene. So where I do understand where you're coming from, because we'd like a story that's tied together very nicely. It's not too long. It's not too short or anything. Now, the version of Blade Runner that I have, the DVD copy I got, it's called the Final Cut. So it's without the. Now, I have seen the version. It's been a long time, but I did see the version with all the narration in it, and I do have to say, the non narration version is superior.
I've never seen that version.
It's very hard to find anymore. I don't even know if. I imagine it maybe if you go like to a secondhand movie store or something, you might be lucky enough to come across a copy that someone may have brought in to sell or whatever, or trade in or whatever. But aside from that, when I saw it, it was on VHS, and it was back when Blockbuster still existed. That'd actually be a fun little video to do sometime. Back when Blockbuster still existed.
We still have one left.
Yeah, it's up in I think it's in either Washington or Oregon. I can't remember which.
And could you put up this Mountains of Elysium comment? I'm not saying I hate the scene. I'm just saying that the pacing is a little bit challenging at times. I mean, when do people have time to watch a movie? Usually late at night, right? You're sitting down and you've got this scene of him zooming in. It's like, okay, I'm getting tired.
Well, I don't think Elysium was being contrarian with you or anything. He was just saying that's his. So, and Elysium, I know it's very late where you're at. I appreciate you hanging out with us tonight, my friend. It's always good to see. I know we didn't get a chance to join our stream as always yesterday, so appreciate you stopping by tonight for me, this morning probably for you, because Elysium is actually from Ireland, so he's from across the pond.
Oh, cool! My whole family came from Ireland.
I think you might have mentioned that. Not to mention the last name Leary is very, very Irish.
Well, it used to be O'Leary. Okay, they dropped the O when they immigrated.
That doesn't surprise me. So, let's see. Jeff B. Fear of the new, different electricity, Frankenstein now, Asimov, AI, Asimov, I, Robot, etc. Yep, Jeff, you're right on the.
Have you ever played Fallout?
I have played part of Fallout 4. That's about the only one I've ever played. And I didn't care for it.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
But I'm aware of it, so go ahead.
In Fallout 3, the president is a AI, which is kind of creepy. You find out he's an AI at the end of the game. President Eden.
Huh. Interesting.
Fallout is very, very much adopted a lot of the concepts laid out by Ridley Scott. You have what's called synths in Fallout.
Yeah.
Which are hidden among the population. You have this organization called the Railroad trying to protect these synths. And you have a Tyrellian corporation called the Institute. So, this movie has inspired, I think, a lot of sci-fi stories through the years.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you look at, like, in particular, the set design for this film, it has been replicated numerous times throughout
no
the
no pun intended.
no pun intended. So the design aesthetics for this film can be definitely seen most notably in, well, for instance, The Fifth Element, an all-time favorite of mine, and Judge Dredd. Yes, campy as all hell, but also a favorite of mine.
I like Judge Dredd.
Well, I'm talking about the one with Sylvester Stallone.
So am I.
Okay, all right. That for me is one of my all-time favorite Stallone roles. He's
all these old movies, dude, have creepy. If you watch them today, there's certain things that you see, like him cussing and getting ticketed. all these old movies. There's that. I mean, that kind of
You're
rings
thinking of
true in a
Demolition
certain way.
Man, but yes.
Oh, am I?
Yeah, you're thinking of Demolition Man. But
Okay.
yeah. No, it's you're that's the one where he gets fined every time he cusses.
Well, I've seen
I
them
love that.
both. It's been a
Oh,
while though.
I own Demolition Man and I own Fifth Element. I don't have a copy of Judge Dredd though. But I do need to change that. And if y'all just a small little plug. If y'all want to hear my thoughts on Judge Dredd and Demolition Man, I did do a review of both those films back last year. So that particular video is on the '90s pop culture playlist. So if you want to check it out, it is there. I did cover it. So, but and also shout to the chat. Price is Right reviews. Price, it's always good to see you, bud. Appreciate you stopping in. Let's see. I'll bring up your comment here. Wishful thinking. I wish Deckard or Harrison Ford made a cameo appearance in Cyberpunk 2077 with Keanu Reeves.
As far as I know, Harrison has never done a video game. I could be wrong, but I can't think of one.
I don't think he has. I don't think he has ever done a voice role or anything else. Even when they did that Indiana Jones game back, I think in the early 2000s for the Xbox, they got somebody else to do Indiana's voice. It wasn't Ford. So, but I will say this: this movie came out in terms of Ford's career when he was really hitting his stride with what he was doing. And honestly, I think this is a part that a lot of people kind of forget from his resume. Because obviously he's not playing Han Solo, he's not playing Indiana Jones. He's playing a detective, a gumshoe, to use the old terminology. And I think that type of role really suits him. And it's kind of a shame that he's never done more roles or anything like that, because he has the appearance and the attitude of kind of a browbeaten private detective. But for him, it works.
Yeah,
And
his demeanor is suited to playing characters like this. The and just the general I'm having trouble accessing my words today.
It happens. Don't feel bad.
I'd like grumpiness of the character. Is something that kind of lends to the credibility of he's been doing this too long, right? I've been doing this shit too long,
He's kind of a curmudgeon. I think is another good adjective to describe his character. He's not adversarial. He's just kind of surly, and he's like, I don't want to do this crap anymore. He's like, I'm tired of being the Blade Runner. He's like, I'm tired of killing. So, but he gets Bryant drags him back in, and he's like, oh, it's like that. And Bryant's like, yep, it's like that. And it stinks. You do legitimately feel somewhat bad for Deckard, because, to quote a favorite fictional character of mine, he's very good at what he does, and what he does isn't necessarily a good thing. That's, of course, a quote from one of my all-time favorite Marvel characters, Wolverine, aka Logan.
Yeah, it kind of depends on if that were a real job, it kind of would be dependent on your outlook on the whole, question of does a replicant deserve respect?
And that's a good question. Do replicants deserve to be treated like human beings? And I know that is definitely a question that they do explore, I think, in more in depth in Blade Runner 2049. And to touch on it briefly here, Beans, well, and I'll even reference one of my all-time favorite episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation. I think it's like from the first or second season, The Measure of a Man. When Picard makes a statement, "Oh, for heaven's sakes, Tim!" And Tim of Tim's Talk, it's good to see you, bud. Appreciate you popping in tonight. How we treat Data and others like him will say a lot to us as people. And I think the fact that we treat I think the fact that they treat the replicants rather inhumanely, to see them as disposable or replaceable and just simply have them put down, speaks very poorly to us as human beings.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, it could be the episode you're talking about, or it could be a different one where they amend the official stance in one of those episodes with like one of the admirals or something.
It's actually the episode you're talking about does connect to The Measure of a Man, because Data creates another android,
and they amend the Constitution or whatever it is,
or
at least talk about it. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while for me as well. No, what they do is they force Data's hand into him handing over the android that he's created to Starfleet, essentially. And Picard is like, "Data, don't you dare do this." And the admiral in question is like, "You do realize I speak for Starfleet?" And Picard's like, "I don't give a damn. I'm not going to have one of my officers hand over their child to you. Because whether that child was built in a laboratory in terms of Data or was born naturally, that android is Data's child." So
yeah, I mean the show did deal with the concept of artificial, rights and stuff. Definitely.
yes, it does. So, well, I know, Zach, I know you've got to go. I know you've got work this evening. So I'm gonna let you. If you've got any final thoughts that you want to give before you head out and everything, floor is yours, my friend. So have at it.
Yeah, I mean, a really good one, man. One of Ridley Scott's most interesting films, I would say.
Yes.
Definitely a departure from Alien. I mean, as a sci-fi film, if you put them side by side, totally different in
Yes.
every way. So it was kind of him, which saying, yeah, we've got a new sci-fi movie is probably what got studios interested in making it. But this was him kind of totally exploring different territory within sci-fi. Yeah, I mean, I think we laid out a bunch of good stuff so far. Hopefully, we get some new conversations. Your chat has a lot of great insights into the film too, which is great.
Yeah, and always thanks to the chat. I'm actually going to be going for a little bit longer, even though Zach's got to go. But Zach, is always good to have you along with me, my friend. And I look forward to our next discussion, our next review. So you have a good night. Be safe, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
Well, thank you for having me, man. Last thing, I just saw Ridley Scott's House of Gucci. The guy still got it, man. He still got it.
The missus had me pick up a copy, and I've not seen it, but based on your recommendation, I will probably check it out. So thank you.
I'm glad he's still going, man. Ridley's a genius. I fucking love the movie. And here's the weird thing. I might like the second one even better, but that's a topic for another time. Thanks, man. See you later.
See you later, Zach. So, like I said, I'm going to be going for a little bit longer. So if any of you want to hop on here with me, I know I put the link to the stream in the in my chat room over on Twitter. But if anybody wants to join me right now, I can drop the link in the chat and everything. And if you want to share your thoughts on Blade Runner with me or in the chat, just give the word, people, and I will be more than happy. I'll talk about it and everything. I've still got some things I want to discuss in terms of Blade Runner and everything, but um, the door's always open, folks. You know this. So, uh, speaking for myself, with a movie like Blade Runner, it wasn't something that I was terribly interested in when I was younger. But as I got older and I became more aware of all the different types of films that existed during the 1980s, it was definitely one that I gravitated towards because it was a sci-fi film. Obviously, it had Harrison Ford, which I was like, ooh, Harrison Ford was in something else other than Star Wars and Indiana Jones. I'm going to check this out. So I'm definitely, um, I was like, I'm going to go check this out. Absolutely. And as I've watched it and as I have gotten older and I've had more time to really dig into the different aspects of this film, I have to say, like I said with Zach, I really enjoyed the story that Scott told in this film, and I will bring up. I got to scroll up a little bit here, but um, Stephen Murphy, your comment here. Rest in peace, Douglas Trumbull, who worked on the special effects for this film. We lost him recently. Yeah, if unless I'm mistaken, Stephen didn't Trumbull also do the special effects for Alien for Scott or anything. I'm pretty sure he did, but I can't honestly recall off the top of my head. So if you can back me up on that, Steven, let me know. Elysium, I know it's very late for you, bud, and I appreciate that fact. But so don't worry about it or anything. I'm happy to have you here in the chat. So I've talked with you so much, I almost can hear your voice in my head now. So, and I'll bring up your comment here, just briefly. Oh, I meant to. Okay, I saw House of Gucci. My wife loved it. I enjoyed it, even if I won't be buying it on DVD. Fair enough. Um, we never got a chance to see it in theaters and everything. And the missus was like, "Hey, once y'all get it in stock, get us a copy." I'm like, "Okay." So, okay. Um, but with looking at this film 30 some odd years on, it really does stand the test of time. And that's why I love reviewing these films with you all. I love doing these discussions on films like Blade Runner. I'm definitely going to I need to watch it first because I have never actually sat down and watched it from start to finish. I've only seen clips of it. But another Ridley Scott classic from the 80s, um, Legend with Mia Sara, Tim Curry, and of course Tom Cruise. That's one I really want to do a dive into because it's a fantasy. It's a really great fantasy film from the 1980s, and it's another benchmark film for that decade. So, and shout out to the chat to another really real good dear friend of the channel, LDG of Geeks and Joy. LDG, my friend, good to see you. Hope you're having a good night. And everybody, if for those of you that are not familiar with LDG, he has a great channel. LDG of Geeks and Joy. His streams are called the oh okay, real quick. I will address your comment here, Stephen, but um if you're not subscribed to LDG's channel, he does a great thing for the community. Yeah, absolutely. LDG, count on it and everything because I know there's a couple of things we wanted to discuss and everything. So, and but I appreciate you stopping by. Yeah, the waiting room. It is the stream between streams that's only slightly more interesting than watching paint dry. So, if you're not subscribed to LDG, go check out his channel, give him a subscribe, and tell him that yours truly sent you. So, but I'll bring up your comment here, Stephen. No, Trimble didn't do Aliens, but he did do 2001 Close Encounters and Star Trek The Motion Picture. That's where I've seen that film. That's where I've seen that name before. Thank you, Stephen. Very, very much. Truly. So, let's see here. This film is 4 years old. It stands up so well, as always, in my list of greatest films. Elysium. Oh, hell yes. Oh, absolutely yes. Cannot say I disagree with you whatsoever on that one. And Alicia, LDG, you are very welcome, my friend, as always. I will make one other. I'll make another little side comment in terms of, yes, Jeff B. I have to agree with you on that one. Legend was good too. Practical effects greater than CGI. Absolutely. The funny thing, the thing I found funny about this film is the fact that Mr. Deckard is a Johnny Walker drinker. You see several bottles of Giant Walker, either black or red label, in his apartment. And once the stream is over, considering the week I've had, I'm going to be definitely pouring me a glass of that. And I'm going to pop in a movie. Don't know what yet, but I'm going to have me a nice, good glass. I'm going to have me a good glass of scotch, unwind from my week, and enjoy my weekend off. So, but just a nice, honestly, the one thing I didn't really get to mention or anything, and we can talk about it right here, the product placement in this film. Oh, well, a lot of people say, "Oh, there's product placement. There's too much product placement in this movie." I think Scott did that deliberately, and let me explain why. It was something that Zach had mentioned before he had to leave. There is a very oppressive feeling about this world, about the future of the world in 2019. And it almost feels like corporations have taken the place have become like the ruling party or whatever the case may be, or they become more, the corporations have become even more corporate. They become even bigger. And you see their advertising everywhere. I mean, if you look at this film, you've got advertising, well, granted, somewhat dated now. There are some that still are around, obviously, with especially Coca-Cola. You've also got JVC, you've got Polaroid, you've got TDK, which is another old media company. They obviously produced VHS tapes. And I think that they might actually still be around. I think they might do CDs and like DVDs and everything, stuff like that, like blank ones in particular. But it adds a layer of realism to this world in the fact that it makes it more believable. It makes it more realistic. But I think also at the same time, it also gives the impression that corporations are more intrusive into people's lives because they're quite literally everywhere. When you particularly see ads for Coca-Cola on a mechanized Zeppelin or blimp, essentially. So, the other thing I'll bring up is the hover cars, particularly the police cars. I have to admit, I absolutely just love the design of the hover cars in this movie. I even like the design of Deckard's. I don't know if you call it his squad car per se, but maybe his own, just his personal vehicle. It's very boxy. It's also very futuristic, but it's also 80s futuristic. What they might have considered what cars would look like in the future, but from the lens of the 80s. And as I also mentioned, the model design for the Tyrell towers or the pyramids. I found it very interesting that Scott would go in that particular direction with the design of the buildings. Because there's something very old, but also very futuristic about those shapes because it's obviously a pyramidal. What was I saying? It added to the it added to Tyrell's disconnection from the world around him because the buildings are so immense and so massive that it creates a layer of separation from him from the rest of the population. Elysium, you knucklehead. I had a pleasant glass of Method and Madness, a new Irish whiskey, to relax earlier today. Great minds think alike. Yes, I have to agree with you, Elysium. Absolutely. The oppressive advertising really adds to the atmosphere and the dehumanization of society. Yeah, could kind of regress a little bit. When I saw this movie, like as a teenager, I found all of those ads popping up everywhere as more humorous and more goofy. I like, oh, they have Coke in the future. That's funny. But you look at it now and you're like, they have Coke in the future and their advertising is everywhere. You would think by now people would like, hey, you want to get a Coke? Yeah, sure. Why not? So it's Jeff B. I'll bring up your comment here. Flying DeLoreans. Yes. Yes. Well, I will say, however, the flying conversion for the DeLorean is much different from the flying cars in Blade Runner, but at the same time, no less cool. So, um, mm. But yeah, in terms of like favorite scenes from this film, that's a little bit more of a that's a little I can't say that there is in particular a favorite scene from this film from me because the film across the board is so solid. The narrative is so well structured that the entire movie kind of stands out for me. I mean, of course, you have particular quotes that are rather iconic from the film and so on, but yeah, I can't say that there is a particular favorite scene of mine. Now I will something else I will remark upon, and this is something that never really struck me until just recently when I've rewatched this film, and that's how very subtle special effects or makeup effects can give a very dehumanizing um aesthetic to a character because you don't see any type of mechanical inner workings for the replicants. It's simply a contact lens in the eyes of Sean Young and Rucker Hauer and the other and Daryl Hannah and the other characters that play replicants in this film. And that's all you quite literally need. And that for me is a really impressive thing with a movie like this. Because while they obviously did have a fairly substantial budget for the movie. I think Scott wanted to go very minimalistic. He's like, I don't want these things to look like walking tin cans and everything. I'm kind of thinking in trying to think how Ridley Scott would think. He's like, I don't want these to look like walking tin cans. I want them to look human, but I want them to have some sort of aesthetic that makes them feel inhuman. And I think the glowing pupils of the replicants was a good move. So, I'll bring up your comment here, Elysium. The pyramids portray the corporate lords like the pharaohs and also points to the horrors of human sacrifice associated with South American pyramid. Elysium, a good insight, my friend. Very good insight. Yeah. Yeah, I can totally see where you're coming from with that. Yeah. Well, very insightful. Um, Because if we look at the history of the world and architecture and so on, the pyramids are always built for people of means or people of stature. And I think that's what Scott was wanting to communicate with the character of Mr. Tyrell. And I think that very well communicates the idea that this is an individual of importance, of prominence, one that cannot be easily reached by any stretch of the imagination. And it speaks to Scott's ability as a visual storyteller in a lot of ways. So, um, because there is a very strong visual storytelling element to this movie. Yes, the dialogue obviously does carry the film. That's just a given. But as I mentioned, with the glowing pupils of the replicants, with the different set designs for this movie, with the set design for the world itself, it was all very cluttered. It was all very claustrophobic. It was very um, confined in a lot of ways. There was a lot of urban sprawl and everything, but it was built on top of each other on multiple layers, and you've got different architectural designs built on top of one another. And it gives the impression that this world is also very old, but also very has had a lot of um, retrofitting done to it and everything to keep it up to date with the times. So that for me is I think one of the really great strengths of this film is you look at the set design and it really gives you a peek into the mind of Ridley Scott himself, because this was obviously one of his earlier films. I mean, he had done this film, I think, right after a few years after he had done Alien, obviously. And um, if you want to hear my thoughts on Scott's career as a director, just in general, obviously, again, another small little plug. Go check out my director spotlight playlist. I did a stream on Scott's career as a director, as a producer, and so on, and everything. And I gave my thoughts on how I feel about his films. But I have to say, Blade Runner is most definitely, I think, is a standout for him. I love what he's done in his career. And despite some of the comments that he has made about modern cinema, those are his positions. He's entitled to them. He's entitled to feel how he wants to feel. I'm not going to tell him he can't. That's not my place. The guy's really freaking Scott. But I think this movie is very much a testament to his skill as a storyteller and as a director, and as someone who at the time was very much on the cutting edge. And he's kind of had to adapt as the times have changed in terms of cinema in the world. But he still has his place. He's earned his place. I know that there's another series that he's been involved with and everything that's on HBO Max and everything, and that's of course Raised by Wolves. I've not had a chance to, except for the first 2 episodes of season 2, had a chance to sit down and watch any of the other episodes of Raised by Wolves thus far. It's not that I'm not interested. I definitely want to. It's just life has been, well, very hectic for me the last couple of weeks and everything. And it looks like it's not going to be changing. And to kind of give y'all a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, and to also give y'all a heads up and everything, we found out late last year that our landlord was getting out of the rental business and was paying several of their properties up for sale, including the home that we're renting from them. Now we're not being kicked out on the street or anything, but we have been looking for a new place to live, either a house or apartment for rent. And we've got a couple of leads and everything, and we are waiting on paperwork and forms to be filled out. or be processed. So they're depending on when all that gets finalized, there might be some disruption at least for a day or two in terms of the content for the channel. I will let you all know this now rather than you all be surprised. I will, of course, put out something on my social media to make you all aware of this as well. But while y'all are here, might as well tell you and be done with it. Like I said, there might be some disruptions until we get moved and get settled and everything. But then I will pick back up right where we left off with the content for the channel, and with what I've got in store in terms of the different projects I'm going to be doing this year and going forward over the next couple of years or more. And I've kind of given call signs to these different projects. There's obviously Project Ultra Retro. That's going to be the video and streaming series. I think that I'm going to be putting together. That's going to discuss the cinema and the entertainment business of the 1930s through the 1970s, and that's going to cover primarily film directors and and actors, actresses, and everything across those boards, because that's always been something that's been of interest to me. And it's something that I would definitely want to share with you all. And I've got people who have expressed an interest in being a part of that project. Zach was one of those people, actually. The other thing is, of course, my Star Wars fan fiction, Unity of the Force, that's going to be call sign Project Unity. So I've had to put a pin in that until we get everything kind of settled in our personal life and get things taken care of. And then once we get settled down and kind of get everything normalized again and everything, I will be sitting down to put the finishing touches on my Star Wars fan fiction. It's not going to take much, and then I can hand it off to Madam Ambassador to for her to edit for me. I do want to let you all know, Madam Ambassador is actually going to be making a few appearances in the next few months. Everything here on the channel. We're going to do a couple of reviews together. We're going to be going within the next couple of weeks or so to see Death on the Nile, the film by Kenneth Branagh that stars Gal Gadot, which is an adaptation of an Agatha Christie novel, a murder mystery. We're going to do a live stream review of that. We're also going to be doing a review, and I'm going to be doing some more movie series reviews. I'm going to do one on the X-Men films from the 90s and the early 2000s. But she's going to be joining me for my review of X-Men Days of Future Past, because that was actually the first film that she and I saw together when we started dating. So, and I thought that would be a fun project for her and for the two of us to do together. So, that will be coming up within, like I said, all of this will be coming up over the next several months or over the next year or so, because Project Ultra Retro is something that's going to be ongoing. It's not going to be one or two videos and that's it. I want to really dive into the cinema and the entertainment industry of the 30s through the 70s, because there's a lot of great films. There's a lot of great actors and actresses to discuss. The directors alone is a great topic. And considering the impact that black and white cinema has had on me personally, and just cinema in general of those decades before I was alive, is of great interest to me, and I want to share that passion with you all. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be an opportunity for a lot of great conversation. And that for me was the first and foremost thing when I created my channel 2 years ago. So, and Price is Right. Welcome back, bud. Appreciate you. Price, not much. I was just giving a few other further thoughts on Blade Runner. I've been getting everybody a little bit of an update on what's going to be coming up on the channel going forward. Also, giving everybody an update just on um, personal life and everything. To kind of fill you in real quick, Price. Me and the missus are going to be moving within the next week or so, within the next couple of weeks and everything, into a new place and everything. I'm potentially going to be moving back to my hometown, which I won't lie has a lot of appeal for me because I've been gone from there for almost 10 years now. And Elysium, maybe. There's even been discussion between her and I of her maybe starting her own channel. Now, nothing's set in stone on that, but it's something that she has considered because of a lot of stuff that she'd. Did you see my tweet for Ukraine UA? Price, no, I didn't. I haven't been on Twitter a whole lot today except to send out my notification about my stream this evening. Other than that, I haven't. I haven't been keeping up a whole lot on that. I do know what's going on over in the Ukraine. I will say this briefly because you all know I keep this channel apolitical. I don't get into politics here. That's not what my channel is about. But I will make this very brief statement. Speaking as a person of conscience and also as a person of faith, I pray for the people of Ukraine. I mourn for them because of what is happening to them. I also pray for a peaceful and equitable and swift conclusion to this entire crisis. There are a lot of people who are caught in the middle of this, and they shouldn't be. This is a situation that should have never occurred in the first place, but it has. And I won't get into my own political views here. Again, like I said, I keep this channel apolitical. I don't talk my personal politics. But I hope that somehow this does have some sort of peaceful resolution to it that doesn't result in a great loss of life. Because I don't think that's anything anybody wants to see. And does it make me sad? I would be lying if I said no, it didn't, because it does. I do most definitely feel for the people of Ukraine, even though they are several thousand miles away from me here in the United States. I would not wish what is happening to them on anyone. And yes, I will freely admit I am biting my tongue a little bit here, but that is all I will say. Because I will not, to maintain the integrity of this channel and what it is about, I will say no more further and everything in terms of how I feel about this situation politically. But speaking on in terms of the humanitarian crisis and the loss of life, and it's a horrific thing to see. And I am sad to see it happen in my lifetime. This world has seen enough war. I hoped that maybe in my lifetime we would have outgrown this, but sadly we have not. I always had great hopes for the future, and though those hopes have dimmed somewhat, I still have hope for the future, for humanity. And it's sad to see that in 2022, we are still fighting over something as trivial and stupid as territory and resources. I'm reminded of, what? Give me just a minute, guys. I'm gonna go quiet for just a minute because I want to look up something. So just bear with me for a minute. Here it is. This is actually a movie I will be doing for Project Ultra Retro in the next few months. And it is from the 1940s, if I remember correctly. And the speech is not my words; is the words of a man who is a million times more talented and more charismatic than I am. And that is, of course, the late great Charlie Chaplin. And it's from one of his best pieces of work, The Great Dictator. And I think these words, if not in part, but in total, are very applicable, especially now. And I quote from the mind and the pen of Charlie Chaplin. I'm sorry. I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone, if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help each other. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate or despise. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there is room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violence, and all will be lost. The airplane, the radio, and I would add, the internet, have brought us together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness of men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world. Millions of despairing men, women, and little children. Victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those that can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bareness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will be returned to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate. Only the unloved hate. The unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery. Fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man. Not one man or a group of men, but all men. In you. You, the people, have the power. The power to create machines. The power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. To make this life a wonderful adventure. Then, in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world. A decent world that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power. But they lie. They do not fill the promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national borders, to do away with greed and hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all people's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite. From The Great Dictator, starring Charlie Chaplin. So, sorry for that little, I won't say rant. Again, those are not my words. Those are words by a man who was far more talented than I, the late, great Charlie Chaplin. And I'll bring up your comment here, Stephen. I performed this speech when I auditioned for a drama school. I didn't get in, but I'm okay with that. I didn't know if I would have been cut out for it in the long run. Well, Stephen, I will say, considering your knowledge of cinema and film and so on, you didn't let your passion go to waste. And I appreciate, Stephen, I truly say this with all sincerity. It is a pleasure to always have you in the chat. You always give a lot of great insight, and I greatly appreciate it. I greatly appreciate you. So, as I have said before, I will say again. Once you click that link and you come in here, you are an ambassador. I may be the ambassador, but every one of you that's in this chat tonight that will catch us on the replay, that have subscribed to this channel, you yourself are an ambassador. And that's why I say be ambassadorial. Be fair, be honest, be funny, be yourselves. Do not be anything other than what, in my perspective, than what the Lord made you to be. Don't be fake, don't be phony. Be yourselves. And you will always have a place here in the ambassadorial wing. So, but I think with all of that being said, and then some, obviously, I think we're going to wrap up for this evening. But I do want to thank my friend Zach Larry for joining me tonight. And I do want to thank you all in the chat this evening for being a part. I do want to take a look at the poll. We are going to close it here in just a minute. So it looks like with the poll, as I end it now, we are at 55 dissenting to 45 in the positive. Whoop, it's shifting again. Okay, hang on. Let me do a refresh on this because it might be off. So hang on, because I do want to give a final read on the poll before I close it off for tonight. Let's see what y'all had to say. All right, come on. Oh, it's dragging. Okay, here we go. All right, with 14 votes. And it shrunk on me. Son of a gun. All right, there we go. With 14 votes, 57% saying yes to 43 saying no, that Deckard was in fact a replicant. So, I say the jury's still out, but but as always, I do appreciate y'all's insight. You know this. If you've been here long enough, you know this. So I'm going to go ahead and the poll right there. Hang on. Thank you. What program is it that you use? I do have to sign into something when an invite is sent because if I have the time, I wouldn't mind joining in the future, depending on if I'm available, whatever day that is. I use StreamYard, Steven. It's honestly, I think it's one of the best pieces of software for people who do like to live stream. Now, the nice thing about StreamYard is you can also record videos and then upload them onto YouTube or whatever platform you're on. So, but Steven, I don't know if you are on a social media platform. I do have an account both on Twitter and on Instagram. Those are the ones I use more prominently. I do have a Facebook account for my channel, but I don't always get on there as much as I should. My social medias are down below here in the crawl. On Twitter, you can find me at Ambassador Kosh7, and on Instagram, the Ambassador Kosh. So, if you're on either one of those platforms, Stephen, that's where you can find me. That's where you can contact me. My DMs are open. I do respond to private messages and whatever. So, just give me a follow and send me a message or whatever, and we can talk. So, I would love to, like I said, I would love to have you on board. So, anyway, as I was saying, again, thank you all for being here tonight. I hope you all enjoyed the stream. Like I said, if you catch us on the replay, make sure you leave your comments down below with anything myself or me and Zach brought up this evening, and share your thoughts on this great piece of cinema, Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. I will be planning out my content or my streams for next month. I've also got already got several reviews planned out. Just like I said, we're waiting on paperwork to finalize for the apartments that we've applied for to find out where we're going to be moving to and when exactly. So that will kind of dictate what goes on next week in terms of the channel. But I of course will be back, and I say this eventually with my friend Mountains of Elysium and Zod Rider, Fiona Wolf, and Lord Koj, and hopefully if he can ever make it back, Classic Comics for our next broadcast on the Council of Ones as we continue our review of season 5 of Babylon 5. So, Elysium, I'll contact you on Twitter, but just to say this, We've got a pretty good lead, so we're just waiting to hear. Next week we should know something for sure. But thank you as always, my friend. I appreciate it. So, but anyways, folks, I will see you all next time. You all have a great evening, a great weekend. Stay ambassadorial. And until next time, this is the Ambassador, signing off.
I have always been here.